Stone Brothers production.
Hello, sorry for the delay in the videos. I've been a bit busy as of late, but I'm going to be back on my regular video schedule. This is 5 serial killers in Arkansas. The next date is California serial killers, but it will be broken down into video parts because there are so many serial killers in California. But let's begin. Number 5. Marion Albert Pruitt, A.K.A. Mad Dog Killer. In 1979, Pruitt was given $800, a new name, and placed into Federal Witness Protection Program after testifying about a murder in Atlanta, Georgia federal prison. He was released in 1979. In 1981, while being on death row, he committed many murders while being on witness protection. Pruitt called himself a mad dog killer after he committed all of the 5 murders in the same year. He killed a Mississippi loan officer, Peggy Lausch, by shooting her to death. Pruitt kidnapped and murdered a convenience store clerk and 2 others in Colorado. In April 1981, his common-law wife, Pamela Sue Barker, also known as Michelle Lynn Pearson, was found dead in Rio Rancho, New Mexico. She had been bludgeoned with a ball and hammer and been burned. Pruitt abducted Robert from Fort Smith convenience store where she worked, took her to a wooded area behind the store and shot her. During his trial, he said he had killed people and committed robberies to support his cocaine habit and went up to $4,000 a week sometimes. From death row, he asked a Mississippi newspaper to pay him $20,000 to disclose the location of Barker's engagement ring, which they refused his offer. Later, he offered to reveal the location of a Florida victim he murdered for a paid appearance on Geraldo. He received life sentences for Barker's murder, as well as the murder in Colorado and Mississippi. Pruitt also confessed to killing the cellmate he testified against in the Georgia prison. Pruitt denied killing his wife during the trial, though. Pruitt was sentenced to death for the October 1981 killing of an Arkansas convenience store clerk, one of 3 people he killed that week. Marion Albert Pruitt, at the age of 49, asked God and his victims for forgiveness. He then closed his eyes as he was injected. He also said, "I would also like to ask all the people ever hurt and their families to forgive me for all the pain," he said, "and I forgive everybody for what's about to happen to me," and then he laid to rest. Number 4. James Waybern Hall, A.K.A. Big Jim. James Waybern was drafted by the Navy in 1943. In spite of his best efforts to escape the military service, Hall was dishonorably discharged after 8 weeks of training. At his home in Little Rock, he married a 19-year-old Farron Clemens on March 14, 1944, but their relationship was a stormy one. They had a brief separation in June. On September 28th, Hall visited his father-in-law, reporting that Farron had left him 3 days earlier. Police were notified, getting a report of the young woman's promiscuous behavior, and the police closed their investigation after a week, declaring her a probable runaway. Their theory was bolstered 2 months later when her relatives received a Christmas card with Farron's signature, postmarked from Bakersfield, California. Soon after, James Hall borrowed the card and the envelope before officers had a chance to examine it, and Hall said he lost it, supposedly. Loggers discovered an abandoned cart in Ouachita County. The dead man was found slumped with a bullet in the heart behind the wheel of the car and was identified as Camden Barber Carl Hamilton. He was dead for several days when found, but had no reason to connect the murder with the disappearance of his spouse in Little Rock. The death toll raised on February 1st when E.C. Adams vanished near his route to his job at a Little Rock war plant. His car was found outside of Fordyce, and searchers located his body in brushes with a single bullet to his brain. Doyle Mahurin was reported for overdue scheduled meat delivery, and his vehicle was found hours later 40 miles southeast of Little Rock. There was a bullet found in his head, and his pockets were emptied of $125 in company cash. Police was without a suspect by March 2nd, when James Hall was arrested in Little Rock after a bar fight and was fined $106.90 on his plea of guilty for just minor assault. Police became interested of him as being a suspect when an acquaintance said of loaning him a car on January 28th and found a loaded pistol in his glove compartment with a single round missing from the clip. When Hall returned to the car the next day on January 29th, ballistic tests revealed the gun had been employed to kill Carl Hamilton, matching the same bullets in his pistol. A burned-out car was found on March 9, 1945 near Heber Springs in Claiborne County, Arkansas. A severely burned-up corpse was found in the back seat and was identified as J.D. Newcomb, Jr. from dental charts. Authorities discovered quantities of ammunition and shaving gear stolen from Hamilton's possession in Hall's home. On March 15th, James confessed to a series of hold-up execution-style murders that earned him less than $300 overall, which is worth around $4,000 if it was today's money. He later led detectives to a site where his wife was buried and surprised to learn that a farmer discovered the skull months earlier. She was identified through her crooked teeth, and Farine was finally laid to rest. Convicted with multiple murders in a 2-day trial in May of 1945, he was sentenced to death. James Hall was brought to an electric chair on January 4, 1946, and he was all smiles, laughing and joking with his guards. And soon after he said, "Boys, I'm not afraid." He told him as he was being strapped to the chair and fastened with electrodes. He then said, "I can take it, boys," moment before he was executed. Number 3. Mark Allen Smith. Smith is the first known serial killer to strike in Des Plaines, Illinois. Smith grew up on Chicago's northwest side and was a troublemaker as a kid, trying to strangle a female classmate behind the building at the age of 8 in 3rd grade. A year later, when Smith was 9, he stabbed a 6-year-old playmate more than 20 times with a penknife, but the boy survived thankfully, and Smith was sent to a psychiatrist. His action was only a prelude of what to come when he got older. Police Commander Richard Rauskowska said he brutally murdered at least 7 women in Des Plaines. One of Smith's victims was Janice Boyard, a chemist at a chemical plant in Des Plaines. For that reason, Rauskowska and Des Plaines detective Raphael Tovar appeared on June 18th before the Illinois Prison Review Board at the Cook County Criminal Court building in Chicago to tell why Smith should never be released after being eligible for parole, now at the age of 52 in an Illinois prison. Smith killed at least 3 women or more while serving the U.S. Army in Germany. He then killed Obie Faye Ash in Cotter, Arkansas on December 3, 1969. A month later, on January 27, 1970, Smith murdered Jean Irene Bianchi in McHenry County, Illinois, and Boyard, a 23-year-old Evanston resident, on February 27, 1970 in Des Plaines. For these slayings, he was sentenced to 500 years in prison, Rauskowska said. He served only 10 years before becoming eligible for parole. An additional 18 years were added on after an escape attempt. He was denied parole again in August 6, 2005 for the 10th time trying, since he is eligible for parole every 3 years, even though having a 500-year sentence. Jean Bianchi and Jean Ann Lingenfelter were but 2 of at least 12 victims inmate Smith admitted to raping and murdering, which a number of his murders are unsolved cases in which him being a prime suspect. His sentence at Pontiac Correctional Center lasts until June 2220, and he will be still eligible for parole again soon. Number 2. Unidentified serial killer for Redhead Murders. These are a series of unsolved homicides believed to be killed in various parts of the United States, including Tennessee, Arkansas, Kentucky, Mississippi, and Pennsylvania. It was assumed that the killings occurred between October 1978 and the 1980s, but they may have continued all the way until 1992. The victims, many whom never been identified, usually had reddish hair, and their bodies were abandoned on the side of major highways in the United States, which most of them were either hitchhiking or engaged in prostitution. Authorities are unsure of how many people are responsible for the 6 to 11 victims involved were done by the same perpetrators. Body of a white female was found naked alongside Route 250 near Littleton, Wetzel County, West Virginia, on February 13, 1983. There was a pair of citizens thought her of being a mannequin before discovering it was a human corpse. The body had been placed in this area recently as the snow was on the ground and not present on the body. They said she was about the age of 35 to 45, and tire tracks and footprints indicated she died in a different area at the time. She was suspected to be suffocated or strangled, and her hair matched the Redhead murder cases. A person of interest in the murder is believed to be a middle-aged white male at 5 foot 10 inches and 185 to 200 pounds. The man was found in the area, assumed to have disposed it there when someone had seen him. The body of a 28-year-old Lisa Nichols, who also used the last name of Jarvis, was found near Interstate 40 near West Memphis, Arkansas. She was a resident of Virginia, abducted with no contact with family, and finally was found by a couple from Florida who found her strangled corpse. She last was known hitchhiking across the states and abducted by the unidentified individual who likes red-haired women. She had red streaks in her blonde hair, so it fit the profile and matched other previous murders. On January 1st, 1985, another victim was found in Jellicoe, Tennessee, in Campbell County on Interstate 75. Crime scene investigators figured it was probably a few days before in late December 1984. Because of the advanced state of decomposition. Like the others, she was white and had short red hair that was curly, which she was likely between the age of 17 to 25. She was found with various scar and burn marks on her body and was 2.5 to 5 months pregnant. The National Missing Unidentified Persons System said her body was too decomposed to estimate a weight of the victim. Second Campbell County victim was found on April 3, 1985, but the hair color is unknown, which does not immediately indicate she was a victim in the Redhead murder cases. She supposedly died in between 1981 and 1984, 1 to 4 years before. Unlike the other victims, she was younger, in between the age of 9 and 15 years old. She was located some distance from Interstate 75 near a strip mine in Campbell County. Due to the condition of the body, they weren't able to find the cause of death, height, and weight of the victim. There are a lot more unidentified victims. All females were found near or on the side of highways having red hair in Mississippi and a few in Tennessee, one possible victim in Georgia, a few possible victims in Arkansas, Ohio, Texas, North Carolina, and a few other states having possible victims matching the description of the red hair victims. It is thought that most of the victims remain unidentified due to being estranged or not close to the existing family members, or may have not been native to the states in which they were found. In 1985, not long after the Greene County victim was found, the state of Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Arkansas, and Mississippi requested help from the Federal Bureau of Investigation for help with the cases. A possible suspect was emerged in mid-1980s when a 37-year-old trucker attacked and attempted to strangle a woman with reddish hair. He later was dismissed from the case, although he had left her laying near the highway, presuming she was dead. Another suspect arose, and it was another truck driver aged 32 in Pennsylvania that was questioned after kidnapping and raping a young woman in Indiana. Fortunately, she managed to escape. The suspect was also dismissed, though, after being questioned by Tennessee police. This case is still very unknown, and the unknown amount of murders in the case, since a lot of the women were considered possible victims and most of them unidentifiable. Number 1. Unidentified serial killer known as the Phantom Killer. This unsolved murder case was coined Texarkana Moonlight Murders by news media, and the murders were committed in spring of 1946 between February 22nd and May 3rd of 1946 in the Texarkana area. Texarkana is along the border of Texas and Arkansas, which both states are included for the murders. The mysterious moonlight murder scared the sleepy southern town of Texarkana in 1946. The profile of the unknown serial killer focused on young couples in the park at the end of a lonely country road and brutally murdered after the sun went down. The first reported victims survived, and their names are Mary Jean Larry and Jimmy Hollis, in February 22, 1946, near a secluded road outside of town. The Phantom Killer approached the couple and blinded them with his flashlight, and then he held them at gunpoint and told them to get out of the car. The Phantom then told Jimmy Hollis to take off his pants, and then he started to beat him severely, fracturing his skull. Then the Phantom serial killer told Lorraine to run, and she scrambled towards a ditch. He then told her to change course and run towards the road, and he then chased her down and sexually assaulted her before letting her run away again. She got away and knocked on doors in the closest neighborhood screaming for help, and the couple had help soon after. Fortunately, in spite of the degree of his attacks, the couple survived, but others were not so lucky. They described him as a 6-foot-plus man with a white mask or a potato sack with holes cut out for the eyes and mouth. He was considered a younger white male under 30 years old. He was then dubbed as the Phantom Slayer by other witnesses from later victims, which seemed like a ready-made killer movie for drive-in theaters. Richard L. Giffen, age 29, and his girlfriend Polly Ann Moore, age 17, were both found dead in Griffin's 1941 Oldsmobile sedan on March 24, 1946, between 8:30 and 9 a.m. by a passing motorist. The motorists thought they were asleep at first, but found Griffin between the front seats with his pockets turned inside out, and Moore was found spread out face down in the back seat. Griffin had been shot twice while still in the car, and both had been shot in the back of the head with the .32 automatic Colt pistol, and were both in the front page of the next morning paper read as "Couple Found Shot to Death in Auto." Bowie County Sheriff W.H. Presley, leader of the investigation, and his old friend Texas City Police Chief Jack Runnels got a call and sped to the scene of the crime. They immediately started a citywide investigation along with the Texas and Arkansas City Police, the Department of Public Safety, and the FBI. They chased over 100 false leads, and the motive was robbery. Officers stated that all the clues found thus far had been no help by March 30th. Sheriff Presley and Chief of Police Jack Runnels posted a $500 reward for the effort to gain any new information to arrest and convict the killer or killers. A few weeks later, after the couple was murdered, another 2 people were murdered at the end of a secluded road on April 14, 1946, which had the same type of area where the previous victims were attacked in secluded areas. The 2 victims were Paul Martin, age 16, and Betty Jo Booker, age 15, who were friends since kindergarten. Martin's body was found around 6:30 a.m. by Mr. and Mrs. G.H. Weaver and their son, who drove 200 yards to notify the police of the 3rd victim. His body was found lying on the side of the road near North Park Road and was shot 4 times, once through the nose, again through the left 4th rib from behind, and a 3rd time in the right hand. Booker's body was not found until 11:30 a.m., almost 2 miles away from Martin's body on the side of the road of Morris Lane Road, by members of the Boyd family, along with their friend Ted Showeppi, who joined as a friend of the girl's family. Her body was laying on its back, fully clothed, with her right hand in her pocket-buttoned overcoat. She was shot twice, once in the ribs from the front on the left side, and the second shot was through her left cheek by her nose. This double murder was considered by the same person who committed the first double murder with the same .32 automatic Colt pistol bullet shells at the scene. Multiple rumors were spread around that the killer was caught and suggested that a local minister had turned on his own son as a suspect in the killings of the second double homicide. The investigators were mad about these rumors, saying it was injustice to the family and the boy because it's not true at all. They even mentioned that they don't have the minister's son in custody, nor have had anyone in custody or questioned a minister's son relative to the crime. After the first double murder, some parents warned their children about being out late. When the second double homicide happened, it shocked the city and curfews were set for the businesses. In the first week of May, the Phantom Killer attacked what are his last official victims, Virgil Starks, age 37, a farmer and welder, and his wife Katie, age 36, in their farmhouse northeast of town. Virgil Starks was shot 2 times in the back of the head. She was shot twice in the face, and amazingly survived, and ran down the street to her neighbor's house to get help and gasped, "Virgil's dead!" soon after she passed out. She was brought to a local hospital by some local neighbors. She showed no sign of going into shock, and her heart rate was normal. 4 days later, Sheriff Davis talked with Mrs. Starks, and she discounted a rumor that was circulating about Virgil hearing a car outside of his home several nights in a row, having a fear of being killed. Arkansas police officers Charlie Boyd and Max Tackett were the first at the scene. 3 clues were found at the scene. First was a caliber of bullets, and the second clue was a flashlight found in the hedge underneath the window where Starks was shot from. The last clue was bloody prints around the house, shoe prints found in the kitchen floor, and smudged fingerprints in other places. This last vicious shooting put the city under serious shock. Residents armed themselves and curfews were set to local businesses. No convictions were ever made in the connection with the Moonlight murders during all the investigations. Many people believe that a local man named Ewell Swiney was a possible suspect who was arrested in 1947 for auto theft, and people thought he was the Phantom Killer. His wife had a confession, but by law she could not testify against her husband. Swiney remained in a prison as a habitual offender until 1973 for theft and died in 1994, without ever implicating himself in the murders. After 200 people being arrested as suspects, none were the suspect at all, and the Texarkana murders remain unsolved to this day. Although they haven't seen the man behind that white mask, chances almost 70 years later he no longer has been seen since the murders. Yet his legacy lives on to this day after a film was made about the killer called The Town That Dreaded Sundown in 1976, made by a local native, Charles Pierce, a native of Texarkana. The film is shown as a tradition near Halloween every year since 2003. A remake was made of the film in 2014 and just shows how iconic this unknown serial killer was. I hope you enjoyed the video. My next video, which is modeling with an op in CSGO Part 3, will be up this weekend. I'm shooting for the next Serial Killer Series episode to be up in the middle of next week, so stay tuned for that. I am thinking of starting a new modeling series soon to those that like modeling videos in Autodesk Maya program. I will be recording random 3D model videos in real time, but will play in a faster speed with background music to those that like seeing the process of how art is made on the program. I hope you guys all have a good day, and subscribe, like, and leave me any suggestions on what to model for my upcoming new video series.